So this is a wooden ophicleide. Not too many of these made, and indeed this is a fairly recent instrument being built by me in 2002. It is inspired by some of the original wooden ophicleides as far as having a square form factor instead of trying to make it round. But otherwise the keying system utilized by me was intended to make an inexpensive kit that I put plans up for on my website. So a lot of things were done to make it a little simpler to construct, but it still works amazingly well for what it is, and sounds pretty much like an ophicleide. And the fingerings I used here, with one exception, were the same ones I'd use on any other B-flat ophicleide, which indeed this is. This instrument is not tunable except by probably putting a extension on the mouthpiece. There's no tuning slide on it, and the bocal is fixed to the body, so there's no adjustment there. The instrument itself was tuned to A440 by notching out the bell, a technique I learned from tuning organ pipes. But other than that, it works pretty well in the upper range. The lower end of the range is pretty funky, but at the moment, that's why I'm not demonstrating it. The main reason for that is that all the rubber bands I use for springs had rotted and fallen off over the years of me not playing it. Indeed, this is the first time I've touched this instrument in, I don't know, at least 6 or 7 years. And I put on rubber bands that were too tight, so I can't actually open the keys. Even though I push on them, it bends the keywork more than it opens the tone hole, and it doesn't really work down there. I did find some long enough rubber bands to use up here, so that worked pretty well. But anyway, that's a wooden ophicleide. This is a C ophicleide, the only one in my collection, and I bought this one from a friend in England back in December of 2015, and only recently got it back from restoration. It needed quite a bit of work. And I have some trouble with this instrument because I really haven't spent any time at all with it, but I'm going to give it a quick toot on the same piece I used for the wooden ophicleide. Take this one down, whereas I wasn't able to do that with the wooden ophicleide, and play the bottom line of this as best as I'm able. C ophicleide, played by somebody who doesn't play C ophicleide very much. By the way, these are some stands that I make for these instruments. I call them triskelion stands because of their triskelion shape, although without the authentic curls on the ends, but still generally a triskelion configuration. I would like them to display this way, but then they get full of dust. I forgot to mention that this is an original instrument, it's an antique, and I mentioned that the wooden ophicleide is based on an antique but is fairly modern in this particular example of it. And this is a reproduction, a modern reproduction of an E-flat quinticlave, which is a tenor ophicleide or alto ophicleide, depending whom you ask. And this was made by Wessex tubas. And it's the only company that makes a reproduction quinticlave, and since the originals is so rare and so hard to find, it's really the only place to get one that I'm aware of. Now this is really a strain for me. I don't really have chops at all for such a small mouthpiece, but I'm going to try to play a little of it. I'm not sure I'll be able to even get into the pitch range. Probably could use another key there. Can't do it. Well, leave well enough alone, but you got the idea. It has a much smaller sound, even though it's higher pitched. Quinticlaves were notorious for this, besides having generally bad intonation within the instrument. I think Cliff Bevan, in an article he wrote in the ITEA journal, mentioned that they sounded rather toy-like, that there was just something inherently inferior with the design, and I would tend to agree. Played in their lower register, they're not quite so bad, but then their intonation problems really show. Still, quinticlave. So this is another reproduction, also by Wessex tubas, of a B-flat ophicleide, this one in a silver finish, which hasn't been polished recently. It's pretty tarnished. They offer the same instrument in a plain brass, just like the quinticlave here is plain brass, and also in a lacquered brass and in the silver. I probably made a mistake getting the silver one because it's pretty heavy compared to just a plain brass one, but I'll still give it a quick toot for you. And these really are incredibly affordable. It's possible to buy these currently, as of early 2016, at a price lower than you're ever likely to buy an antique for, so it's really a good deal. It's the most economical ophicleide reproduction that Wessex offers. And then finally, old reliable for me, my antique B-flat ophicleide. And this is the one I most often get to play. I'll play the same piece. My vocal's loose. I'll take it back just a little bit. One of the problems with playing several different instruments in a row like this is, even though this is a familiar instrument for me, sometimes I get mixed up with the fingerings. They all are a little different, and that plagued me here. But and the fact that I'm already tired from playing and having trouble hitting my high notes. But there we are. Not the instrument's fault, it's mine.